It is now mid-July 2010, and it's time for us to go to Wyoming to do some work on the cabin. We won't be going the interstate. We're taking the back roads through southeast Oregon. We're going to head down toward the Alvord Desert area and the east slope of the Steens Mountains. We follow the road from Burns to Burns Junction. Take a right on the Alvord Desert Road, the east slope of the Steens Mountains Road, and head toward Fields. It may be somewhat dusty, shaky road on down the east slope of the Steens Mountains, but that's our way. The road is paved a little ways past the ruins of an old stage stop. There was one of these about every 20 miles with a hotel and a place you could eat, and they could get fresh horses. Past Man Lake. Man Lake was at one time our favorite place to fish, but in recent years it has gone downhill. Someone introduced some goldfish there, and they're eating the food that the young trout need to eat. Past Man Lake, nestled in the foothills of the Steens Mountains, we eat some dust and push southward till the next sight we see will be the Alvord Desert. As we move southward, the Alvord Desert is on our left, and this is a vast wasteland with totally nothing growing on it, and it's as flat as Safeway's parking lot. You can still drive over most of it. As long as you're careful not to go into a wet spot, you're probably okay some of the months of the year. Other months of the year, you can't do it. It's quite a dry desert area out here on the east slope of the Steens Mountains. There's not nearly as much vegetation here as the west slope, but we're in the rain shadows. But just the same, it collects a fair amount of snow and even some rain up on top. All this moisture runs down into the ground from the Steens Mountains, and then it comes up out in the desert as hot springs. There's a fault that about every 20 miles along this fault line, there will be a hot springs come up. It felt good to be out here. We thought everything was in order at home, and I checked with our rentals, and everything was fine, so we can have a nice, relaxed vacation. So we thought. We're going down to the Alvord Hot Springs. It runs out of the ground right under the road, goes down an open ditch, and then volunteers have piped the water into two pools that were built here in the 1930s. We're the only ones here, and the water's a great temperature and looks great. So we're going to get in the hot springs and give it a try. Very relaxing and very pleasant, with the Steens Mountains standing tall, with the sun setting behind one of the peaks, and the Alvord Desert with its vast expanse stretched out beyond us. The moon is just a tiny sliver as it's starting to show up over the horizon. By the time we've used the hot springs, only a few minutes, the keeper of the stars is putting the sun away. We spent the remainder of the evening at the hot springs, and some other people eventually came. They said they were down at the Alvord Desert flying gliders. They take a big old Cadillac with a big V8 in it and hook a mile worth of cable on it and pull these gliders till they get airborne and then release them, and you're on your own after that point. The next morning, I'm up before the sun comes up to watch it as it rises over the hot springs, coming over the Sheep's Head Mountains. I'm joined by some other people with a real good dog. The hot spring is hopping around, getting him a little bit of something good to eat this morning. He's sitting there looking the situation over. There are always jackrabbits around the hot springs. They love to drink the water and get the mineral. We see the first gliders getting ready to launch. The big Cadillac takes off out across the Albert, stringing out 1 mile of cable. In next to no time, the glider is heading skyward. They come off the ground almost instantly, and they climb till they run out of cable. Then the cable's released, and away you go to soar the skies without even the noise of an engine. A northern harrier hawk sits on the ground right out from the hot springs by a bush. They're a ground nester. They nest right on the ground. And it looks like he's got him something he's going to sit there and eat. After everything is secure with the northern harrier hawk, we get in the vehicle and decide to go to Whitehorse Hot Springs this morning. We pass fields and then take the Whitehorse Road. We go past several old homestead shacks on the way. They're all built of stone out here, and the oldest of them had a roof where a bunch of sticks were laid up there, and then sod was put up there. Some people call those soddies, but that's not a real soddy. I only know of one real soddy out here. These are stone houses with just a sod roof. There's some irrigated farmland as we go along the valley with many homesteads in it. Unfortunately, these relics of a bygone era of ranching are almost succumbing to nature. And without help, they'll only be a distant memory in the past. When the roof is gone, the mud for mortar will dissolve, and there will only be a pile of rubble where these once cozy little homes sat. Now we cross over the top of the Trout Creek Hills, and we have a vast expanse of dusty road and desert ahead of us as we head toward Whitehorse Hot Springs. We're being followed by a constant cloud of dust as it churns in our wake behind us down this dirt and gravel road. But we're approaching Whitehorse Hot Springs, and it won't be long. We stop for a moment just to reflect on another bygone era of the past. This is the ruins of an old short-lived Pony Express station. These, you can almost hear the horses come galloping up as they come here to change horses, and a wiry little orphan guy jumps out, grabs a fresh horse, throws his mail bag on, and he's off again across a desert trail. Sometimes being attacked by outlaws and even renegade Indians out across this vast expanse of desert. We pull up at Whitehorse Hot Springs expecting to see no one, and we see a group of cars as we start to pull up. As we look closer, we find that they're all sheriff's vehicles. There were a total of 12 of them. We learned they'd spotted a marijuana grow operation from the air, and they were in here trying to make a drug bust. A little Great Basin gopher snake slinks away ahead of us and goes in a hole in the ground. He snuck away just about as sneaky as the drug farmers. Just before the sun touched the horizon, the cops all came back to their vehicles, bearing arms, and they had destroyed the drug crop, but never even caught one suspect. I asked the sheriff if it would be okay if Marge give the suspects a good chewing out, and he said he would have let her had he caught some of them, and they were kind of disappointed to catch no one. But this is a war out there, and these drug people are armed with the very latest and best of all kinds of guns. I climbed to the summit of the little hill right behind the hot springs to watch a beaver dam, and there it is, the marsh hawk, or the northern harrier as they're known now, flying low across the sagebrush. They once again have nested right across from the hot springs in the tall grass, and the young are out practicing flying. We noticed the adults numerous times would go out hunting and bring food home for the young. The young would lift up and grab it in midair. A little lizard is hiding here in the rocks. He doesn't want to become part of that midair exchange of the marsh hawks. This is a very nice little hot springs. The smaller pool is the hotter of the two, with bubbles coming up with volcanic gases and hot water. But just the same, it's still not too hot to use, and it's a very nice, clean little pool. There's always a bunch of dragonflies around. They try to deposit their eggs in the cooler pool and also catch many insects in flight as they constantly swoop over the hot springs pools. Several different types of dragonflies are here, all depositing their eggs in the cooler pool. They'll attach them to a little stick, and then the eggs will hatch and the young are on their own. There's some double wing, real nice dragonflies. We put my canoe in since I'm taking it to Wyoming. I thought this is a good opportunity to put it in. Gary and Donna are here. We've met them here twice before, and so Gary and I put the canoe in the beaver pond to go take a look around and see what kind of life we can see in the beaver pond. We pass by the beaver house and continue on up around the rest of the beaver pond. There's much life around the beaver ponds. There are always ducks and coots. There are lots and lots of beaver here now. Since beaver pelts are worth next to nothing, the population has exploded on them. They'll move into an area and deplete the area of cattails and willows and things they like to eat. Then they'll move on, leaving their structure here. Then in a few years, when things grow back, they move back in and continue on the cycle. An excellent opportunity to observe the life in the pond. A little garter snake has caught his dinner His dinner will be a nice fat frog. Oh boy, does that look good. So he's got to drag it away to where he's secluded and swallow it whole. He unhinges his lower jaw and starts on the epic battle on his job of swallowing. No one ever said that life was kind or easy. On the banks of the pond, nature can be cruel at times. The frog got eaten and who knows when the snake will be eaten by something. There is abundance of life around the bank of the pond, both plant and animal. A bull thistle is in bloom. We look to the sky and see the northern harrier hawk flying low across the sagebrush. In their never-ending search for food, we find the remains of a cottontail rabbit which has been eaten by the hawks.
Adults are still feeding them. There are all these little canals the beavers have made so they can swim to their beaver house and carry food. And there sits the beaver house. And there's their dam.
You heard what the salmon said when he ran into the concrete wall, didn't you?
No.
Damn!
Yeah.
Some people.
Once again, the sun is setting low in the sky for another spectacular sunset, but we have to start thinking about packing and moving on toward the cabin so we can get some work done. So in the morning, we'll pack up and head out. We were camped right next to this beaver pond, and all these animals come in and catch ducks and other things around the pond. And that particular night, we had eaten a roast, and we'd set the bone and some of the gristle and fat outside the trailer. Then to pick up the next morning to haul to the garbage. The next morning, I went out to get it, and it was all gone. Not a morsel was left. I searched around for it and never found it. And then I looked on the dust on the fender of the trailer, and here was the biggest old cougar track. He apparently had eaten all the scraps and monkeyed around there in the night while we were sleeping. Too bad I didn't see him. I'd have made a rug out of him. The next morning, we're up early for a final look around. We see the northern harriers are busy at their game of feeding their young, and the young will come up and meet them up midway in the sky, and there will be an exchange of food made by an aerial drop. The adults will drop the food, and the young will grab it right in midair. Any of the animals that are nearby, deer, antelope, or jackrabbits, most any of the animals will come in and drink out of the hot springs. I guess they need the minerals from the springs. This jackrabbit seems like he drinks totally forever in the early morning light on the edge of a hot springs. We say farewell to this magical place and the animals that are here, but we hadn't said farewell to quite all of them. We had a flat tire on the gravel road. We started to dig the tire out. A kangaroo rat jumped out and like this scared the hide off Marge. And then he ran under some of our gear. We're looking for him, but I think he's escaped into the desert. We start working on the tire, changing it, and Marge looked down at my leg and said, "How'd you cut your leg?" I said, "I don't remember cutting my leg." I looked, and a little trickle of blood had ran down. Then I saw something sticking out. I looked again, and here was the gosh-awfulest, biggest, ugly old leech had attached to my leg. I guess when I was wading out in the pond, he attached to my leg, and he was going to have him a feast as we traveled on. But he ended up not getting to go all the way with us, as the kangaroo rat did too. We changed the tire, and the mercury on the thermometer has soared to 105 degrees. We fortunately were well equipped for a flat tire. That's something you have to expect. It was just a matter of digging our tire out from under the gear. We load up and head on. We go toward the Owyhee River and near the towers of Rome. Since our drinking water was getting kind of warm, we stopped at this little roadside water fountain, which is fed by a natural spring, and got us some nice, fresh, cold water to drink. That goes pretty good. The paved road winds down into the Owyhee Canyon and then past what they call the Towers of Rome. Then back up out of the Owyhee Canyon and we're up on the plateau, but we have one more stop we want to make on the way out of here. High up on top the sagebrush plain, we find the old abandoned store, Jesse Anderson's old store. I imagine this was a popular place for the early settlers. Then we go to what was once a safe house. It's kind of like a fort, and all the settlers would collect there when there were Indian problems. Then Sacagawea's son, John Charbonneau, crossed the swam the Owyhee River when the water was kind of high and caught pneumonia. He came to this safe house, and there he died. So he'll be buried right here. And he was the one that was born on the Lewis and Clark's expedition to Sacagawea. It looks more like a typical Indian grave that you would find in most areas.
John Baptiste Charbonneau, 1805 to 1866. This site marks the final resting place of the youngest member of the Lewis and Clark expedition, born to Sacagawea and Toussaint Charbonneau at Fort Mandan, North Dakota on February 11, 1805. Baptiste and his mother symbolized the peaceful nature of the corpse of the Discovery. Educated by Captain William Clark at St. Louis, Baptiste at age 18 traveled to Europe, where he spent 6 years becoming fluent in English, German, French, and Spanish. Returning to America in 1829, he's ranged the far west for nearly 4 decades as mountain man, guide, interpreter, magistrate, and 49er in 1866. He left the California coal fields for a new strike in Montana, contracted pneumonia en route, reached Inskip's Ranch here, and died on May 16, 1865. John Baptiste Charbonneau, as a baby, was his mother, Sacagawea, a member of the Lewis and Clark expedition. As a man, was a pioneer of the West of pleasant manner and esteem in the community.
Okay, now this one.
This plaque is dedicated as a memorial to John Baptiste Pomp Charbonneau, whose personal life experience elevated him to national recognition in American history. He began his road of life on an epic journey westward. The youngest person accompanying the Lewis Clark expedition, Pomp was carried in a cradle board by his mother, Sacagawea, a Lemhi Shoshone. Following the death of Sacagawea in 1812, young Pomp came under the guardianship of Captain William Clark and was schooled in St. Louis, Missouri. He spent 6 years in Europe and Africa. While abroad, he learned to speak English, Spanish, German, and French fluently, in addition to several native languages he already knew. During his stay overseas, he accompanied and was hosted by a German royal family, the Wilhelms of Ruttenberg, who he then returned back to the States where he served as Alcalde of San Luis Rey, California. His love for adventure and free spirit brought him full circle back to the natural wonders from hence he traveled as an infant child. As a guide, he taught others to appreciate the natural beauty of this great nation.
The tattered flag of our nation waves in a gentle breeze above the grave of one of our nation's great adventurers and guide. From there, we move on through Jordan Valley. The road is blocked here, and we find it's a funeral procession. All sorts of people wearing cowboy boots and cowboy hats are out crossing the road to go up to the cemetery. Once again, it's paying final respects to what was probably at one time a cowboy that roamed this desert lands. From there, we move on and across the Owyhee Desert and then down into the Owyhee Canyon and the Snake River country. We can see the farmland in the far distance in the valley near Boise, Idaho. We'll go past the outskirts of Boise, bypassing the town altogether, and head toward Craters of the Moon Hot Springs. We reach the hot springs as the sun is being tucked down behind the hill behind it, and we'll find us a place to camp right on the edge of a little reservoir here. It's a fishing access, so we'll camp for free, and it's really a nice place to camp. Then we go to the hot springs. The name of this hot springs is Horse Trader Hot Springs. We go down a little path not far from the road, and there's an excellent hot springs, real clean and clear, and the water is a perfect temperature. The next morning, we'll have a quick dip in Horse Trader Hot Springs, and then it's on to Craters of the Moon National Monument. This is a really volcanic place and very interesting. You can go up and peer down craters and see all sorts of volcanic lava flows. But the main thing we're here for, we want to go to the Indian Cave and see some of their circles that Stone Age man has built in the volcanic rock. We walk out a trail for about a half mile. After going to the restroom, we find all sorts of little buckwheat and other small wildflowers in bloom, as well as some very interesting lava flows. Some of them mock orange add their fragrance to the early morning air along trailside. There's all sorts of different wildflowers right along the trail. As we move out, we get a little guide. Then we come to the spot that's called Indian Cave. But to me, the most interesting part of Indian Cave is before you get to it, there are these circles. They're called spirit circles, and normally these were only built by Stone Age man around a grave site. So probably there's some graves here, and who knows where. I've seen these mysterious circles at several areas from around the West, Montana and Wyoming, and on the California-Nevada border. And there they are, the little spirit circles. And it looks to be, maybe there's some graves right in the volcanic rock right near there, where they would just place rocks on top the deceased. We go down to Indian Cave and find it's inhabited by a desert pigeon from the Persian Gulf area. These are feral pigeons. They were brought over here as domestic and have gone wild. They bring fleas and disease to the indigenous birds of our area, but there's not much we can do about them, although they are pretty good eating. The feral pigeons are nesting in every little nook and cranny in the cave. We go back out and look again at the spirit circles, and it looks as though it might be a grave right at the lower part of that spirit circle. We check out the wildflowers once again. The phlox and the buckwheat are blooming really nicely as we head toward the cabin. Another spot that looked like a grave, and we're going to move back to the car and make a beeline for the cabin. We have some work to do. On out of Craters of the Moon National Park, into our vehicle, and we're making a beeline for Arco, Idaho, and then on to our cabin in the near the Wind River Mountains in Wyoming. We reach the cabin before dark and start unloading. Then we receive a telephone call from home, and there's major problems with one of our rentals. It seems like we have someone that's gone nuts in one of the rentals, and they're causing all sorts of trouble. So we're going to quickly mow the lawn and get home and deal with this major problem. We get the lawnmower started and mow. It looks like the work will have to wait to another time because we have an emergency at home, and so we're cutting about a week and a half off our vacation to go home, and hopefully there'll be another time when we can come back.